Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Urban Legends video. Alright, let's go ahead and we'll talk about the last one here in this series. This one having to do with urban legends based on some of the kookiest and craziest stuff that still goes on around today in the world, whether it's on the internets or anything else in terms of other mediums. These are the kind of urban legends that still make you shake your head. No one suggested this one in particular, but considering how popular the other one was involving Bill Gates, I thought I would present another urban legend that also focuses on somebody who is, let's say, very peaceful, very calm, known for being someone who, at least based on the urban legend, you would have no idea and think to yourself, how could this guy be associated with this urban legend? And what I'm talking about is the urban legend that's known of Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood apparently being, besides obviously on that show and being in a calm and quiet manner, he was actually a Marine sharpshooter of some sort who was involved in Vietnam and in some cases had a very large number of kills during that war. So that's the urban legend altogether. And then I'm going to talk about at the end why I think this urban legend started was mainly because there is actually another a person that's very Mr. Roger-like, that was known for his calm and peaceful demeanor, and had a show that was pretty popular also on PBS, and he was involved actually in the Marines. So maybe those two, with regards to his, I guess, history, it kind of delved over into Mr. Rogers. Now, Mr. Rogers, his full name was Fred McFeely Rogers. That's right, his middle name was McFeely, and he was someone who his main claim to fame was that great show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Anyone who was a kid in the early 90s or so knew about this particular show. I saw it back when I was a kid. Most likely they were all just reruns. I can't remember if they were the original shows or if they were just reruns, but most likely they were the reruns themselves. And to this day, it still remains a hallmark with regards to children's programming. The way he just walks and talks and then just addresses anyone who's watching the show in a calm demeanor, it's very memorable, and one can see why the show lasted as long as it did. Now, with regards to the urban legend, it actually picks on the complete opposite of what I just mentioned, and it's the idea that Mr. Rogers, here he was, someone hosting a children's show, someone who you would never believe would harm a butterfly, yet the urban legend says that a couple of years before he even was in that show, he was actually a Marine, and he was a Marine sniper no less. And not only that, but he was someone that was very actively involved in the Vietnam War and had a certain number of confirmed kills. He apparently was very, very good at being a sniper, with sometimes having up to 42 kills and in other cases up to 150 kills. So that's the urban legend, how, and it picks on the dichotomy of both things, how here you have someone that is like a Ned Flanders like person on one end, and then on another one an expert sharpshooter that can take down like a playing card from who knows how many feet away, and does a very good job at that part. Now, with regards to how this urban legend first started, nobody really knows where, but sometimes as far as the time itself, it seems to be in the early 90s, which again ties in with the growth of the internet. Anything involving the early 90s, the internet at the time was still in its infancy, and one of the most popular things then, and still to this day, is anything involving forums. And somewhere along the lines, somebody decided, let's go ahead and let's create a crazy topic and see how far it stretches. And it has to do with a topic that's exploiting Mr. Rogers' military exploits, the kind of stuff that he did back when he was a Marine officer, or back when he was in Vietnam. And for example, here's some notes. Like in 1994, it shows on one of the forums, it said, a note on Mr. Rogers: he would be a tough competitor. He has 42 confirmed sniper kills. In Korea is the question mark that it leaves. And then in 1998, someone else posted, so this fellow at work, retired Army vet, says that Mr. Rogers of Children's TV fame served 3 tours of duty in Nam as a sniper. and has been credited with kills in excess of 1,500 meters. And then here's another example. In 1999, someone posted an interesting side note about Mr. Rogers. He was the #3 Marine sniper in the Vietnam War, and one of the reasons he always wears long sleeve clothing is because his arms are covered in tattoos. I know, crazy stuff, right? If one were to believe that the reason why he never wore any short sleeves in his show, or probably in life, is because there he had all those crazy snake or whatever goblin or demon type tattoos that basically covered his entire arms, and that's why we always saw him in a cardigan. Of course, anything involving this particular urban legend is 100% false to this day. Wherever it's spread, if you hear that information, nothing is true about it. The reason why all of this came about, that it's not true, is because we have history to prove that he was never in the military. The way the story goes, Mr. Rogers, he graduated from some college, Rollins College in Florida, back in 1951. And shortly after that, he immediately started his broadcasting career. And eventually that career in television evolved into him doing the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood. And even during that time period, he was also a minister back in the 60s. So that ties into the time period somewhere along the lines of Vietnam. So this was a guy that, again, was nowhere in the military, nowhere in Vietnam, never did any kind of training of any sorts involving sniper. So everything that I just said, or that people have said about with his military training and his expert kills, it's all 100% false. No truthness to that at all. Now, where I believe that a lot of this came from is there was another popular show on PBS called The Joy of Painting. I love this show too. I love watching it. You're looking at the guy that everyone knows, Bob Ross, the guy that's most known for his almost famous trademark where he goes happy little trees whenever he was painting anything as far as mountains and landscapes. And this was a guy, I think they both had the show on at the same time. Someone may have to correct me on this, but I believe his and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood might have been around the same time, because they both hosted it for a long, long time. Their shows were running for a long time. And his story is far more interesting than Mr. Rogers, because yes, this guy, Bob Ross, was actually in the military. He was someone that started in the United States Air Force right at age 18, and then staying pretty much for a good while. He eventually rose to the rank of Master Sergeant, and then eventually was First Sergeant in some base in Alaska. And that's where he started seeing all those beautiful landscapes in Alaska, all the snow and the mountains that would later become a trademark of his artwork. And he has said, with regards to his military service, because he served, I think it was almost 20 years or so. And so he has said that during that time, he was a much different person because the role required him to be as such. He said in his own words that he was mean and he was tough, and he was the guy who, this was his quote, he said, the guy who makes you scrub the latrine, the guy who makes you make your bed, the guy who screams at you for being late to work. And he didn't like that. He promised himself that if he ever got out of the military, let's say he moved on into another career of some sort, that he would never be in a position where he would have to scream at others again. But yes, he was indeed in the military. He was the guy that, for all intents and purposes, was like the guy in a Full Metal Jacket screaming at others with regards to getting things done. And then all of a sudden, now with regards to his show that he had on PBS, The Joy of Painting, compare that and contrast it, where he's talking about happy little trees and he's smiling and he's so happy with himself and happy to be sharing this wonderful joy of painting with the audience members. Contrast between those two, and one can see where where people think or misinterpret and say, oh, actually it wasn't Bob Ross, it was Mr. Rogers that was in the military. Or maybe altogether, just people didn't care and just made up a rumor of Mr. Rogers being in the military the same way Bob Ross was. But yes, that is the urban legend with Mr. Rogers. Again, 100% false, no truthness to it. So if you ever see this particular urban legend, which may come about sometime soon, because anything as far as Mr. Rogers, let's say there's some kind of anniversary, whether it's the anniversary of his death or the anniversary of the show, some commemoration. Once those come about, there will always be some place in the internet where somebody will start this or hear it and mention, hey, did you hear this about Mr. Rogers? Since we're talking about his anniversary of this, did you hear this? And then that's where it'll start all over again. So, alright, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.